All right, guys, we're starting day 2 of the RTM Remote Therapeutic Monitoring course, Module 2A and 2B. So I just said before I hit record, but I was just said again, for those catching the recording, I'm not an attorney or legal expert, so just make sure you do your due diligence. Information can change with passing of different legislation and updates. So always just recommend consulting with any legal expert when it comes to coding and billing and documentation, things that we're going to get in today. But I'm going to give you my best understanding and how, in essence, how I'm doing things. Overall, this is just general information here. RTM, hopefully you guys have a better understanding after yesterday as far as what RTM is and why it's been developed, who does it serve, and the differences between it and telehealth and remote physiologic monitoring. Before we get any further, just if there is any clarification on any of these topics, I'm just going to keep going through unless you guys have a certain question about some of the things that we went over. If not, we'll just keep going through to the information here. So this is just the summary sheet, and this is what I encourage you guys. I emailed last night the recording and also just a summary sheet. The only thing that the one sheet that I emailed yesterday doesn't have is the days. So you can see the 16 days of monitoring. But this is just a helpful guide. Just when you get a little bit confused, you can go back and say, okay, this is the 30-day period. I have to have 16 days of monitoring and data transmission. This term right here, we're going to talk about a little bit more today too. What is monitoring and data transmission? And what can constitute for 16 days there. So we'll define that at least is how I'm interpreting it. And we can have some discussion there. But these are the 5 codes. 98975 for initial setup and education. 98976. This is the device supply. I like to think about it as the rental of the software for 30 days. And then we have one code for the respiratory and then another one for musculoskeletal. And then the last 2 are the time-based codes where we're accumulating actually the monitoring time on the calendar month. All right, so we ended last night with a case study. And I had you guys to write down this information. So I want to know what you guys determined on what to bill for this case. It's right hip OA, started the plan of care in March. The physical therapist recommends RTM, assigns a program and instructs and answers questions, demonstrates good understanding of phone app during the evaluation on March 1st. Then on March 8th, the patient marks one exercise is painful. There's a phone call made by the therapist, updates the home exercise program, answers questions. Took 21 minutes on March 1st. And then over the next 26 days in the month of March, there were 22 more minutes logged. And as of March 26th, the data transmission through the software and monitoring each day from March 1st through March 31st. So you guys type into the chat, what codes would this client be eligible for billing? I'll go back. So here's, again, the codes here, and we want to see what they satisfy. So, all right, I see one person entered in the chat. The other answers, I'll go back to the case here. So again, started, the first bullet point is the initial setup, right? And then the second bullet point is a phone call of 21 minutes. The third bullet point is an additional 22 minutes. So I see the chats coming in. I'm going to go ahead and look, see what we got here. So 98975. So that is the initial setup. So yes, that is one that is qualified for. Going back. So 98975 initial setup. We do meet that because we had the initial training and education, and there's been at least 16 days of monitoring and data transmission that we can see. So that is correct. And then we can see there were 21 plus 22 minutes. So that's a total of 43 minutes in the month of March. That would satisfy 98980. Back to our definition. So 98980, the first 20 minutes would be the first charge. And then the second set of 20 minutes, or from minute 21 to 40, is 98981. So that is correct. And then the device rental. So for 30 days, if we've had 16 days of monitoring, then we have satisfied that. So here are the answers. So the next step is, I didn't ask you guys to do this, but this will be kind of the homework for after tonight. I'll have, we'll just be kind of going through this case, the same patient. It'll be another kind of month of care. But so the next question is to understand is, when can you bill each code, and then how much reimbursement? So I didn't ask you guys to do that, but let me go ahead and reveal that. So the 98975 is eligible for billing on March 17th. So that's the initial setup and education, but we have to wait at least until 16 days of monitoring till we can bill that. So is it that the March the 16th or the 17th? I would just keep it on the 17th, you're safe, and $20 there. And then 98977, so that is the device rental. So we have to wait 30 days to charge the rental for that device. So so it would go from the beginning of March, the eval day, to March or April 1st. You could maybe technically submit it on March 31st if you're doing it to the day, but it's 30 days after the eval and the education. And then we have the two codes. So these are time-based. So you can see this one is actually, we're able to submit for 98980 on March 8th. That was after, remember, the first phone call was 21 minutes. And so that's when the phone call happened. And then the rest of the time was accumulated over the course, which ended in March 26th once we hit that next bucket of 20 minutes for billing there. So let's see here, even though it hasn't been 30 days, correct. So the time-based codes are just time-based codes. Once you hit those times, let me go back. That's a good question where people get confused. So if we go back to 98980, it is billed once per calendar month, but once you get that time, you're good. Let me see here. I thought you were trying to be tricky when you stated he was seen for 28 days and we couldn't bill the equipment code. No, sorry, I was not trying to be tricky. So but going just so we're clear. So once you get those 20 minutes, then you're good to bill for the time-based codes. And right here, I'm trying to find you. I was seen for 28 days. We couldn't bill for the equipment. Melanie, oops. All right. So yeah, so once for the equipment, yeah, once it's we reach the 30 days, as long as there's been 16 days of transmission, then we're good. So any other questions about that case?
Yeah, a question on the when to bill. If those dates don't coincide with a visit date, or they don't have a visit date on the schedule, or even maybe you've done it and their plan of care hasn't ended, but for some reason they don't end up coming back. When do you submit those, and how do you submit those if they're not associated with a visit date?
Yeah, it doesn't. My understanding is like it's not tied to a visit date, right? And so it's remote monitoring, and the time that you accumulate, it's really, now we'll probably get a lot of time during a visit date, but it's you can bill it or once you hit that time. So it does not have to be associated with a day in the clinic, is from what I've heard. So once you get that time, you get that time. I mean, you could technically, you could do an eval, and then set them up on, and then they technically wouldn't have to even come back in the clinic, right? You could just, change their exercises, do remote monitoring, have a few phone calls. It wouldn't even need to have a follow-up appointment. Now, granted, that's probably not how we're going to use it. But that would be billable time that you would have to submit at some point. So it does not have to be on a visit date. That makes sense, Dave?
Yeah, that makes sense. When you're filling out the form, I guess the effective date on there would, the I forget what the claim forms are called, but the CMS 1500 forms,
1500, yeah.
they have the start and the from and the to date. Do you need to put, for the example, the equipment rental codes, do you need to put from March 1st to March 30th on that requires 30-day charge, or that requires 16-day charge?
I'm not sure about that. I can check with our biller how we've been handling that, and get back with you, because I don't do any of the 1500 form. I know the name of it, but actually some what criteria and how you have to kind of put it in the spots to make it make sense with the form. I can check, but I don't actually do the billing. I just give the codes and tell them what date. But I can check on that.
Yeah, and I don't even know how our EMR is tied through with Office Ally, and so I don't even know that we can put a from and to date that's not just on one visit date. So yeah, I appreciate if you could check into that.
Yeah. But the other thing with tying the time period is, so this 30-day period is that was, if you bill that late, then you have to wait another 30 days for this 98977. So if, let's say the patient has a 3-month plan of care, and you put that on, you bill that on April 15th, and you have to wait another 30 days until you could bill that 98977 for the rental. That makes sense. So it's helpful to keep track of your days, because when you bill that first one, you're going to have to wait another 30 days till you can bill the rental code again.
Again, is that on the claim submission date or on the effective date? Like, is it the day you actually submit the claim, or, could I on August 1st submit one for June 30th, one for July 30th, and one for August 30th?
Because how we do it is, because we oftentimes bill, our biller isn't here every day, so we just backdate it, right? So it's not actually when it's submitted, it's just when the date is listed in the claim form for that, for when those charges were accumulated. That makes sense? Not actually submission date. It's the date that you put, that you can backdate into the claim form. Go with that? Or Dave?
Yeah.
Okay. So any question? Did you have any question about that though? All right. Well, let's so these are the codes that we talked about last time and just the full definition. So I'm gonna skip through this part and really get into the rest of the content here. And we'll go through some more case examples too next week. We'll go through a lot of cases, and that's where a lot of this will start making sense once you're actually kind of doing it and putting in the information. So I want to talk about talking with the patient initial setup. And Medicare covers is now covering, your video exercise program. So a few things that a patient has to have is they have to have a smartphone or internet connection. So, occasionally you get those, clients who don't have internet, don't have an email, don't have a smartphone. And, we typically print off, their exercises for them. So there's no way that we can use remote therapeutic monitoring if they don't have access to the internet through a smartphone or some sort of laptop. You can't do it through a print off home exercise sheet. You need to make sure that you get an agreement from the patient to participate as well. So that's we'll be talking about in your documentation. And then, like I said, you can't provide our team with exercise print offs. So what we're doing with the initial setup is, and I recommend two things. One is either have the app on your phone, like whatever program you're using, is either have the app on your phone or take their phone and download the app for them. There'll have to be, some piece like that. And that's part of just the initial setup. So that's what we're finding works really the best, is to do that in the session. I want to show you, let me exit out of here. And so I have this pulled up. So this is the app that we're currently using. This is PhysiTrack. I'll talk more about PhysiTrack as an option. There are some caveats with it, so don't just go and sign up for PhysiTrack yet. But this is what it would look like from a patient's perspective, right? If it was on their laptop. So what we're doing with the client is we want them to be able to log in. Sometimes they have a little bit of trouble, just depending on how tech savvy they are, but we want to be able to log in. Is there any specific program or app you use for the exercises? Yeah, we'll get into more of the options for the software as a medical device next time, as far as the app. But you'll have to have some sort of subscription to a program that provides remote therapeutic monitoring. So right now we're using PhysiTrack. There are some caveats. Don't sign up for it yet, but I'll get into that later. This is from the patient's perspective, because I can log in through my account from a therapist perspective. So what I would do is I would show the patient, okay, here's your exercise, and here's the video of your exercise. These are the ones I've uploaded. Once you've completed, you're going to go up here and hit complete, and then you can give feedback. You can say, I had pain at a 5 out of 10, and then you can hit done, and then go to the next exercise. And the same thing we'll say on this one, you just completed it. We'll go to the third exercise, and this one was fine as well. And then the fourth exercise, I think one more, and we'll say that this one had pain at 2 out of 10. All right, that should be it. All right, and then we can see that it's 100% completed. And now, Ms. Smith, this is what I want you to do every day. You may not need to watch the videos as you keep going with it, but what I need from you is to make sure that you submit that you've completed it, because I'll be able to see your adherence, and Medicare is wanting to make sure that you're adhering to the program. And this is part of what we're able to utilize in our program now, and Medicare is paying for this program as long as you are adhering and submitting your information. We just need you to make sure that this is appropriate. If you have any questions, right now is a good time to ask. So that's our kind of communication to the patient. Now, we let them know the charges. We're a non-participating provider, so we collect from patients up front and then Medicare reimburses them back currently. And so we let them know too, is like, hey, so after about a month, there'll be a charge somewhere between $120 and $165, but this is all reimbursed by Medicare. But we find it's really helpful I'm kind of going back to talking to you guys, is to take them through the kind of the first process with that initial setup. And then what we'll do, I'm going to show you now from how I would then start a session of accumulating some RTM minutes, is I would pull it up. So this is the PT's perspective. So this is me as a program. So I'd pull up their program and I would say, okay, Ms. Smith, let's pull up your program. It's like, okay, great. Look, I see you're completing your exercises. You're logging in. Let's say we start on Tuesday. This has been going for a little while. Or I could say, wow, you were on vacation last week. It looks like you took the week off. Is that right? And they're like, yes, I did. It was like, well, we got to just make it up this week. So let's make sure that we're getting in your exercises. Or they could say, yes, but I just wasn't I wasn't logging my completion, and I would just have to, tell them like, hey, I really need you to access the app because in a few ways I can go up here and you can communicate to me how you're doing, and I can write a message. Great job. Keep it up. And so all the RT programs have something like this. I know I'm just in PhysiTrack because that's who we have, but they're all going to function similarly. They have their pros and cons and certain things, but they all have some form of communication that we're gathering from the patient. But this is what I would do, and it helps to drive in the fact of like, okay, we can see that they're doing their exercises, and they need to hit that complete button, because I'm going to be reporting on their adherence and how compliant they are with their home exercise. So, and then also what I like to do as well is I can go back to, this is what we were doing. I wasn't using that function before RTM, the adherence. But what we would regularly do is just pull up their exercises and just ask them. It's like, okay, we've been doing these 4 exercises. Are you having any trouble with these? Are they going well for you? Give me some feedback. Okay, maybe the pelvic tilt has gotten easy and we're ready to add a bridge. So let's do that. Let's add in a bridge exercise. And so we may do that at the beginning of the session. We may do that at the end. But this is what I would count as RTM minutes now, is when I'm in the app, when we're talking about their exercises, when I'm updating them. And add this little girl doing some bridges, and then I get confirmation like, okay, these are your exercises now, we're taking this one off. Any questions about those? We'll go through those today just to make sure that you're good with that bridge exercise, and then we're just going through the rest of our program. So that's how we accumulate, again, those RTM minutes within the session, is just opening up that, showing their adherence, going over their exercises, answer any questions, changing them in and out. Stuff that you're probably already doing in some fashion, but just use the app. The program that you're using, you just want to use it, so that again you can count these as minute. So let me come back here. All right, so that was kind of the initial setup and education piece, how I would go about doing that. So let me see. I think we did. Yeah, the follow-up
question on the consent.
Yes.
When you're having them sign the consent, Medicare typically covers 80% of the fee schedule. For people who don't have a secondary, are they going to be liable for some portion of this expense?
Medicare, like you said, Medicare is covering 80%, so the remaining 20%, it would be liable unless they have that secondary.
So just if someone who doesn't have a supplement, just let them know that there's, I can't imagine it's a huge charge, like 20% of,
you're looking at, $25 maybe a month.
Okay. Yeah.
20% of, 160 would probably be, if you're getting 160, you're doing really well in a month. The second month will probably be a little bit lower.
Yeah, 32.
Yeah. And the second month usually will be a little bit lower if because you're not getting that initial setup. So you're minus that $20 for the second month if you get the same amount of time. So $20, $30 for the exercise program. But good question. All right, so follow-up treatment process, we went over that. Pull up the app from the therapist perspective, show them that you can see their adherence to their compliance. It helps again, I think it just even helps them just to do exercises. We kind of have our eyes watching, and we're gonna hold them accountable by just pulling it up, and they're having to look at the screen. So it has to help with them actually performing it, and ultimately, if they're doing that, they're more likely to be improving and completing their plan of care and staying engaged as well. And then, like I said, you can demonstrate demonstrations, check for comments. And so what I'm telling my patients is like, hey, use this as like an injury log, or you can write comments, and then we can review it, that you may forget about some sort of exercise. But then we'll start with your session just seeing if you had any comments about something. Maybe you would have forgotten that one day something wasn't working out for you. Make a comment in the moment about that exercise. I'll get it, and then we'll review it when you come back in. So that's how we're using it right now, and it's really added value to our visits and with our patients as well. And the other thing I put on here as a side perk is also it helps to keep either you or your therapist accountable for keeping their home exercise program current. And I found this out for myself as well, as how many times have you gone to whatever program you're using and you're like, oh crap, I still got those exercises on from when you started, and I maybe told you to do these other ones, but I forgot to log in there and change them out. So if you're just regularly in it, it's going to stay more up to date. It's going to be just better for everybody, and them knowing exactly what to do, and that clarity around it as well. I want to get into a little bit of our tracking system. So this is how we're doing it. That matches well with the at least PhysiTrack. Now, again, we're going to talk more about the different programs, and there's different levels. I've been on, I guess 3, and I have a 4th one that I'm doing a call on, like a product demonstration before we meet again. And they all have their pros and cons. Some have the ability to keep up with the minutes when you're in the app. But the one thing that I don't know how any of them can do is keep up with the minutes when you're talking with them in the session. So I don't see there being any type of app that can keep those minutes, if that makes sense. I see that they can keep track of maybe when you're in their app and truly monitoring remotely. But we have to keep up with our minutes when we have the patient in front of us during that visit. So I want to show you here, and I think this will help with the dates too. So this is, and I'm happy to share this as well. I took the patient names off here, so we just have some initials. But let's say here I'm on column 21, row 21, I mean, here. So I want to say Kay Smith. We just started her eval date. And what is today? 7/14. So I'm going to put in the dates. And now it's going to populate. You'll see these date change. You guys, you see these dates change right here. So I can't take credit for this, but my ops manager, he figured out how to some formula that populates the date. So this is 98975, so initial setup. So we cannot bill this until the earliest we could bill this is this date. So that's 16 days later. So we're using this to keep track of the dates. And then 98977, again, and he has a little, you can see the comments up here just to remind us, 1 time per episode of care. And then device supply, once every 30 days, but we can see that this populated. So this is when we can bill for that next date. And then we had this go out a few months. So this would be, let's say we had maybe a 4-month plan of care. We just kind of put this out a few months that we can then look for the dates. So we'd be eligible to bill this rental again on 9/13 or 10/13. So we can go, and then we have a system where we can change the color when it's reached that date, and then our biller can have access to this to know that once we've put it out of color, that it's her responsibility now to do it associated with that date. And then we're keeping track of the minutes here as well. And I'll show you a few other ways that we're keeping track of this, but this is the first. Once we hit 20 minutes, then it's going into this next bucket. There's no need because again, this is the first set of 20 minutes, 98980. So any additional minutes beyond 20 will go into this next bucket to see if we hit that mark. And then now we're on to starting to do ours in July here as well. So we're using this, and then let me show you this second one too. Again, this is our system. I fully appreciate you guys probably have your own system, and maybe there's bits and pieces that you can take from this. Maybe you want to take the whole thing. Maybe you come up with something better, or you have a better idea. If you do, let me know. Everybody will have to have their own kind of style based off of your EMR and the team that you have, and just all those pieces. So this is what you'll have to develop, right? I can't do this for you just because everybody's going to be a little bit different. But I can. My goal here is to explain that you need to have something that accomplishes this.
Fixin. Fixin.
We had somebody come on. Can I share a copy? Yes. I'm going to share this with you
What was
guys.
that for? Huh?
Hey,
Yeah, it said
Yolanda, I'll mute you. Okay. Yes, so I'll share these forms with you guys that you can use. So this is our second one that we do. So we have a hard copy of our where we keep up with our exercises. So everything else is in our EMR, but this is the way that I did it with I was with Results Physiotherapy back before I started my company, and so this is something I just kind of took their process, and I just it's what I knew and it worked well, so I continued it within our own practice. Now this is meant to be on one sheet. The PDF is one sheet, but I wanted to show you in a Word document so I could write. So for day one, we put in the date here, 7/14. Obviously had the patient name right here. We said it was K. Smith. And then, any time that we put into just any type of therapeutic activities. And then we would type, what we did as far as any type of, lifting techniques or something like that. Let's get the idea. Neuromuscular, right? So we would type in the exercise here, and then the reps here, and then the time accumulation of all this whole column, it would be right here. So I want to get to more of the RTM. So we say 10 minutes here. I want to say we didn't do any neuromuscular for the eval day. We didn't do any TheraX, but we did remote therapeutic monitoring. So the first day, most of your time is going to just be that initial setup, which is a non-time code. So you could put that time that you put towards the initial setup here, but that's not going towards your bucket of minutes, the 98980. But let's say that follow-up appointment that we spent 5 minutes. So I'm going to put 5 minutes here. Let's say I get 4 minutes here, 3 minutes. This is all during an appointment time, during a session, right? So I'm putting in my time accumulation right here for remote therapeutic monitoring. And then what I put down here is if we had a non-visit time, say a phone call, or we just get in the app and we're looking to see how they're doing, and we, tell them to, great job, or we see that they're having pain and we make a comment, through the app, that then what we're doing is I would put that day. So let's say, tomorrow or 2 days, let's say 2 days from now, I look in the app and she's not done anything. So I put the date in here, and then I would put, 5 minutes, something like this. So I'll explain why we're doing it like this. And again, take it if you like it, great. If not, and you come up with something else, something better, that's great too. But so what I like about this is I get all my time in one place, especially for my therapist. So when we get towards halfway through the month, let's say, and we want to see, and one of my therapists has an hour, gap, and they don't have anything to do, they got a cancellation, I would say, hey, go back and pull your Medicare notes. So we put up here Medicare at the top because not all our clients are Medicare. So we have these just for Medicare. They can pull all their Medicare ones and they can calculate their minutes. And then they will go back into this patient form here. And then we can go into July and they can say, where were we at? So not this first day because initial setup, but we got 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, plus 5. So we are at 23 minutes. And so they can go in here and just put in 23 minutes so far in July. And then what you can see then is, well, actually, what we would put 20 here, and then we put 3 here. Is how we would do that. So we satisfied this, we can now charge and bill for that. And now we're accumulating here towards the end of the month. And then what I would do is, you can see here in June, with a few of like this 15. So I could look here and we'll say we have, a few days left and it's like, oh man, hey, therapist is Miss Sally Reynolds. You need 5 more minutes to be able to, collect a charge. Can you be sure to, get that time or just get into her app because you're really close to being able to collect those, charges. For this guy here, it's not that big of a deal. But if you're able to keep up with it a little bit, and when you get towards the end of the month, you can target the ones that you're just a minute or 2 away and just do a little bit of work to get the extra $50 or $40 of charges. So again, it takes you need it if you want to be able to catch these things. Then it takes some level of organization to have a system. At the end of the day, you'll miss some, and you won't. You're not going to fully maximize everything, and you're going to get reimbursed. You'll collect on it, but if you do have somebody that has their eye on it, you'll just be able to collect a little bit more with it. I would encourage people not to get too kind of anal retentive about capturing every little bit. But if you're in it a little bit and have some sort of system, it's going to help you to capture kind of that low hanging fruit. That's what we're trying to do is like, can we just get all the low hanging fruit getting started? And then we'll refine this as we keep going. So that is our kind of non-documentation system for keeping track of the minutes. We have the hard copy sheet again, where we just have all our minutes in one place. And then we can very easily, instead of having to go into each individual note and look to see how many minutes we have and open up each one, we just pull out this one sheet of paper and then we log in those minutes. So let's see here. So, the next thing too is if you have therapists, hold on one second, does the communication performed within RTM app become part of the medical record? So it depends on what software you're using. So that would be something that you would need to verify with the software that you use. I've seen some that they let you download the comments. So if you have like the comment section that you can export that data if you want. Can just the information in the RTM software be part of the medical record? That is a question that I'm not sure about, and it likely just depends on how that software company is set up, and that you would need to really talk with them about that. But we'll get into more of kind of what, even if it's not how we're documenting things, to just make sure that we're covered and to do it at least in a timely manner as well. So the other thing is, just to appreciate is like, as you're learning this is if you have therapists, like they're going to have to go through the same learning cycle. And if you can teach it to them, that means that you've understood it at a level that you need to, but it's going to take some time for them to catch on as well. And so, just conversations, I try to tell my therapists is don't worry about the billing days, the 16 days, the 30 days, just focus on collecting some time and understanding like what time we can devote to this, how we can maximize a visit, and that we're starting to use the app more and how we're communicating to our patients. That's how I started off with my therapist. And then as they've understood more, making sure they understand what we're documenting and how we're documenting, in those systems as well. So, and what we're doing as well is, the first 2 or 3 months is we're just kind of tracking our minutes to establish some sort of company therapist norms, and from there, what we'll do is start to establish just some level of expectation. With my therapist, if a therapist doesn't have time to do RTM, that means that they're seeing patients and their schedule is packed, which is good. If they are lower utilized, like they're going to have more time to capture some RTM minutes. So that's what I want them doing, so they can just have more billable time. But again, just recognizing it may not be the most valuable time for your therapist or yourself too. We want to maximize it, but there's probably more valuable time that you can devote to patient drop-off, patient reactivation. That's what I'm, again, encouraging my therapist is to, like, hey, first let's get the high things, taking care of our patients and the drop-offs and the reactivations, and then we're getting into collecting some RTM minutes, and especially those minutes when the patients aren't with us in the session. So our expectations for an evaluation. So we have 60 minutes for an evaluation for Medicare. So what I like to see is that we can have an eval and 2 additional units, including that RTM initial setup. So again, that's just my expectations for my therapist, but I'd encourage you guys to have some sort of expectations if you have any other staff as well. For our follow-up expectations for 60 minutes is, I expect 4 units within 60 minutes. But I do expect that there's a few minutes, 3 to 7 minutes, you can maximize up to 7 minutes of RTM and still get your 4 units in. So that's just what I'm communicating to my therapist is best maximizing their time. Let me check here. We got a few more comments. I'm assuming correctly that RTM can be initiated in the middle of a plan of care. Yes, correct. So if you forget to do it, let's say you're rolling it out right now and you got patients that have already been going, you can start at any time, the initial setup, any point in their plan of care, you can start it up. Any ideas on tracking for those of us that are fully mobile and fully EMR, no paper charting? Amanda, there may be some better options. If you are fully paperless, the forms that we have here could be used as just some sort of Excel, Google Sheets, form. We use it as a paper form, but I'd imagine you could have it on your computer too. And again, there's some of these software, they're more integrated. So we'll be getting into the software options next time, but part of it will be finding that right software for you that matches with the style clinic that you have as well. All right. So what I like to see is around mid-month that we just kind of look to see what time we have. So I had my therapist this week start to calculate their time. Part of that is just accountability as well. Is if they're tracking it, then it helps just to bring that back up to the forefront, since this is something that is newer for us. And then what we're looking to do is around the last week that, again, we track to see that time so that we can capture those ones that are close to that 20-minute threshold. And then we're looking to incorporate into, so we call it scorecards for all our staff members, PTs included. So it's just a level of expectation that, hey, these are metrics that are representative of a therapist that's doing well, low cancellation rates, high arrival rates, that we're utilizing the schedule well. Part of that we can incorporate is some expectation of some RTM minutes as well. We're going to shift to a little bit more documentation now. So the shift is from like your own systems of keeping track. That's what we've just covered so far. And now we're going to go into more documentation. So, and before we get into this, just understand there's not real clear expectations from CMS or the MACs from what I've been heard as far as exactly what you need to have. So because it's so new, it's like they're just they're going kind of one step at a time. So a lot of this is just using some common sense of understanding what documentation should look like, and thinking of RTM as if it was another patient visit, what you would document as well. So everything I'm saying here shouldn't be any surprise. It should really make sense, but it may just make sure that you have a few other things in here as well. So 98975 documentation. So this is the initial startup. So you want to document the type of device being used. So in our notes, we put in PhysiTrack right now because that's what we're using. You want to document the education or training that the therapist is providing to the patient, and regard the setup and the use of the medical device, and document the education or training the therapist provided to the patient regarding what data to input, how to input the data, the frequency to input the data for that initial setup. So for the 976, 977, so again, this is the rental of the supply of the device. So you want to document whether you provided the medical device to the patient or did the patient have their own medical device. So I'd imagine 99% of our patients, they won't have their own software that does some sort of tracking system that they'll be able to use. Maybe somebody could. If they did, then you could not charge for the rental of the device if they had their own. So you want to make sure that you just put that in the document. Also document the name, the description of the medical device again being used, and document the number of day transmission or monitoring days for the 30 days. Because again, we have to have at least 16 days within that 30-day period. All right, and then our time-based codes, what are we documenting? Document the data that was gathered by the medical device. Document the date and the minutes that the therapist analyzed and transmitted data. Document the dates and the minutes of each interactive communication with the patient and what was discussed during each interactive communication. Document changes to the plan of care as a result of the data analyzed in our patient interactive communication. So hopefully nothing too surprising there. Like, again, we can't just do this flippantly. We have to document as therapists and seeing Medicare. We just have to cover ourselves and make sure everything is good there. So I want to take you into, again, how we're documenting. Take it for what it's worth. And I've created a Word document with some of our, like how I'm wording things. So let me pull this up here. All right, so this is me as an example. All right, so I'm going to start a new Medicare low back eval. Some of this stuff I'm not going to put in, so we'd obviously do all this information, but I'm going to highlight where I'm putting in the RTM. Like what I'm highlighting is what I had to add to our documentation that we weren't doing beforehand, which you will likely have to add something as well. So I'm scrolling down here to our assessment piece, and we'll see here that this last sentence, I have the patient demonstrates an understanding of the remote monitoring program, PhysiTrack, and agrees to use their mobile device to self-report adherence to the therapeutic exercise program as part of their plan of care. So documenting that they've agreed to participate there. So I have our charges in here, and this is, I added in this piece. And again, this will mainly be the remote therapeutic monitoring. So I have all kind of the 4 codes that we would use in here, but how we would do it, we would just delete the ones that we're not using, or sometimes we just bold the ones that we did use. But I had to add this here. HCP provided to the patient along with initial setup and education for access and tracking completion of the home exercise program through PhysiTrack. Consultation with the patient regarding RTM was provided to answer questions about the exercises and to encourage continued use in order to promote adherence to the home exercise program. So I had to add that piece in as well. And then under the plan right here, they've agreed to use it for their home exercise program and to monitor, track compliance, adherence to their HEP, and to aid in our communication in between each appointment. So that is what we are doing in our regular daily notes, right? And then if as far as in our documentation. So now the other piece too that that I've done is, how do we keep track of the time and or what happens in adjusting their plan of care when we're doing it remotely, right? So this is kind of new information now that we're having to just keep track of and have some level of documenting while there's no actual patient visits. So I know, Dave, you were talking about like kind of billing for that patient visit, like when we can bill when they're actually not there on a visit date. So what I've done, and again, this is just kind of the way that made the most sense to me, is I've just created like a monthly summary note. And so this would be, let's say at the end of July, once we get all our minutes, then I just want to have it in the EMR. And so, so this is all about, this is just an RTM monthly summary note, where what we would do is we would open this note at the beginning of the month, and we could just add a little bit to it if there was a phone call, let's say that that we had to really work through some things. And if we're billing for that time, in the past, you would take a phone call and not bill for that time. But now if you're, billing for that time and there was some change in their exercise program, then we want to add it into some sort of note like this, that we can say, subjective, patient called, or, call the patient on this date. They said that they're having pain, change in exercise, and then just have some sort of note that helps to keep track of that. Now, I think for most of us, though, again, it's mainly going to be those patient visits, and then you can accumulate some other time just in the app. I think that's the easiest, is keeping it just in the app. And but what we have to document here is just a monthly summary. So this is what we're doing: is remote therapeutic monitoring, data transmission, and interpretation occurred over a period of, again, we have to hit those 16 days, right? So I'm going to say, how many days did it actually happen? So say 24 days. Let's say they started their plan of care on, a certain day of the week. On the 14th, maybe we only have, 14 days this month. This is a monthly summary though, and then we can report on their compliance. So I can log into the app and I can see how many days did they do the exercises. Out of, the 14 days, they did them 8 of the days for the month of July. So that's just our quick summary, is logging an app and seeing what has been done. And then again, this is just a general statement that we're using the app to check. We've modified their program. It's nothing too specific. It's just, if everything's kind of just goes as according to plan, then again, this should suffice for most people. If there's kind of one of those outliers where you got to really change some things because there's a big adjustment, that's when you'll likely just need to reflect that somewhere in your documentation. And then we're putting in just those charges associated with the notes in that monthly summary in that regards. So that's how we're just, it may be, the way I figure is I'd rather have more than less at this point, until something is, more consensus, if you will. I just rather have, CYA. I just rather have, more in the notes than less. And so we have this extra piece. Take it for what it's worth. All right. Will you please provide us with the slides on documentation points? Yes. Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can include the slides. I don't think I did that after the first class, but I can email those out to you. No problem with that. Do you save those in Jane's library? I can if you use Jane. I don't think I made them as a public access, but I'm happy to do that. Do you have to transmit data on 16 days? So let me explain that a little bit more. So the data transmission and monitoring, right? Going back to, let's pull this back up. So right, like for the device supply, the 16 days of monitoring and data transmission. Same thing for the initial setup, 16 days of monitoring data transmission. So this is based off, again, interpretation of what does that mean? And, it's not like it's clear, like what is data transmission from the patient? And like in PhysiTrack, the way it shows is when, let me pull up mine. Yes, I think this is, adherence program. So on these days, the data that was transmitted is that there was no compliance, there was no completion of the exercise. So that is how I'm interpreting it. Again, if you come to a different conclusion, that's fine. But for me, like, that's the purpose of the program is if there's no completion of it, they're not adhering. And so I can jump in and figure out why that's happening to improve adherence. So it shouldn't be tied to performance of their home exercise program. It's data transmission. And this is very relevant data for me, is if a patient is not adhering to and completing their home exercise program. So once I turn this on, the way I'm again looking at it is if I turn on day 1 of the month, then I have 30 to 31 days of data transmission, because I can see how many days they did their exercises and how many days they didn't. And then I can monitor it as well. I can get in here and look at all 30 days as well with that. So again, that is my interpretation of it. Through the app and what the app allows me to see. If the app has said Saturday there is no data transmitted, like that would be different, but this is showing that there's 0% completion of their exercises, and that's very relevant for me as a therapist and the patient. Let me right, guys. All right, so that's kind of the bulk of what I wanted to cover today. The other thing, I think somebody asked about Medicare Advantage, and so I wanted to clarify. I was doing a little bit more studying, and so what I found about Medicare Advantage plans is at a minimum they must provide and cover the same services as traditional Medicare. So that's what it's been told to me, is that they just have to, as part of their plan, is they have to cover the same as Medicare. So if you see Medicare Advantage, then they are also eligible for RTM. So I have another case study for homework, but before we get into that, guys, I know we're coming up on the hour. What questions do you have? All right, I don't see any more in the chat. Any other question, guys? Part of your homework, again, we'll have a week. Our next class will be next Wednesday. And so the homework assignment, what I want you guys to do is really come up with, like, you need to develop your own system. I wanted to share with you mine. I'll share with you our templates and our notes to take for it what you want. But I completely recognize there's some mobile clinics that maybe you got to do something else. Ultimately, you need to have a system that's organized. You need to have a system that helps you easily keep track of the times and the dates, and a system that allows you to document what you need to as you're incorporating RTM. Everybody's will be a little bit different. So that's one. I'd love to see that you guys have done that by our next class. Our case study. So we're continuing the case study, guys. So I'll email this out if you want to jot down the main notes too, because we'll start with our next class with this case study. So this is the same guy, right hip OA. He had his evaluation, on March 1st, 2022. So now we are into the second month. You see, we are into April now. So the second month of treatment, and this is just his summary, his plan of care summary. This is the accumulated time, the dates. So on the 3rd, 5 minutes, on the 7th, 7 minutes, on the 14th, 4 minutes, the 18th, 2 minutes, the 22nd, 7 minutes, and on the 28th, we have 10 minutes. So write those times down, take a screenshot. And then we have data transmission through the app and monitoring each day from April 1st through April 30th. This is how I would do it, because I'm using PhysiTrack, and it's showing compliance if they've done them, or if they've had zero completion, I should say, completion. So, but this time what I want you to do is also, so write down what you're going to bill, when you would be eligible to bill it, and then how much, using the cost reimbursement, the one I've given you, or you can look up whatever calculator you use for your regions. You can look into that a little bit more because, again, it varies based off regions and what kind of MAC area that you're in. So we'll start off with that case. So again, find out, write down what you're going to bill, when you can bill it, and reimbursement. And I'll be emailing out our tracking system where if you wanted to use that Excel sheet where you can put in the date and it's populated for you too. And you can even put in these minutes as well. All right. And then let me do this. We'll come back here. Kind of finish up is just for our next class is Wednesday, July 20th, same time, same Zoom link. So we're going to be going over software. Like I said, if right now the ones that I'm planning to go over are MedBridge, PhysiTrack, and Limber. And then I have another software demonstration for PT Wired. So I'll have those 4 that I'm planning on just kind of giving you the cliff notes of kind of the pros and cons, kind of the costs associated with it. And so that you can kind of figure out which ones you might want to schedule a demonstration with or which one you may want to pick. And then we'll be going through a lot of case examples. So have your, if you want to use my templates for keeping track of the minutes, if you have something else that you're planning on using, to have that ready, because we're going to be going through a lot of case examples. And I just want you guys to get in some reps of putting in the numbers, putting in the dates with whatever system you're using, that you can get in some reps before you're doing it with real patients. So that is it, guys. I see we have another question here. Can you repeat that list? The list. What list? Amanda? Oh, the software. Yes. So MedBridge, PhysiTrack, Limber. So it's Limber, just like if you're really flexible. Limber, and then PT Wired is the 4th that I don't know much about besides get on their website. But on Monday I have a demonstration, software demonstration with them. So those are the 4. Do you guys know of any other ones that maybe you guys have looked at? I mean, I've looked to see all the kind of main ones. HTTP to go. You know what? I don't know about HTTP to go. I've used them in the past. It's been a long time, so I do not know. Note has built in a program. Are you saying they have some sort of RTM program built into their Note, or they just use HTTP to go? I use Jane, and Jane, they're integrated with PhysiTrack, so that's why I started using PhysiTrack, and they have most of the things for RTM. They're still kind of working on full credentialing, if you will, or kind of get into what that actually means. So that's why I'm hesitant to fully recommend PhysiTrack yet. But yeah, any others that you guys know about? Well, if you do come across any other ones that you hear, just let me know. But we'll at least be going over those 4 next week in a lot of case studies. So let's see here. Physiotech integrates with IMR, but I don't use it. Are you saying PhysiTrack? Or I don't know what PhysiTech is.
It's Physiotech. It's spelled, it sounds the same, but it's spelled a little bit different.
Okay. But they have an RTM thing also?
It's an HEP program. I'm going to check it out and see if it has some communication thing. We do currently use HEP to go, and I know it is not compliant. It's basically one way you can send a program, but there's really no way to monitor compliance.
Communicate. I think that's what you'll find with a lot of a lot of the programs, and maybe they're working on it because they see an opportunity. But there has to be some way to monitor, right? You can't just send out exercises, you got to be able to see if they're doing them in some form of being able to communicate through it as well. So we'll be getting into that more next time, all about the FDA kind of definition of the software as a medical device and some fun stuff. So, all right, guys, take it. No more questions. I'll get this out, and I'll send the slides in email. I can send the first day, and I'll send these slides as well if you want those. Happy to do that, and then also the templates as well. So thanks for coming on, guys, and next Wednesday, see you back, same time, same place. Adios.